red today instead of. Good afternoon. It's good to see everybody on this summer day. It'll be winter in about 3 hours, but just handle on in there. But I'm ready because I got me a heavy We-Go jacket, so I'm ready for winter tonight and tomorrow. But until then, it's summer and short sleeves is really working for me, and the sunshine is just making us all happy today. So, any event, welcome. So I'm gonna call to order the Nashville MTA Board Meeting. And first on our agenda is a roll call. Jessica Dolphin.
Present.
Walter Searcy. Present. Janet Miller.
Present.
And myself, Gail Carr Williams, present. Next on our agenda is the approval of the December 15th MTA Board minutes.
Second, Janet Miller.
There's a motion, and then there's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have minutes. And next on our agenda are public comments, and I have a note from Mr. Knight that he is here. Mr. Knight? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope
afternoon.
everybody's doing well. My public comments are going to be kind of a mix. I just want to say to operations and those that train bus operators that are new, please do better. I'm not knocking you, but I want to say this because this is very imperative and important. If we're going to do transit, we need every single vehicle. So if we have new operators that are coming out of classes wrecking the vehicles and not reporting it to operations supervisor, dispatch, that is very problematic. It should not be that customers are calling customer service or sending an email to customer comments to report this. It is the operator's responsibility. So will you all please in operations, talk to your operators, send the emails, have weekly emails to them as a reminder. We need these buses. The other comment about buses, I've been hammering your staff left and right about access ride vans being on high capacity routes like Route 55, 52, 50, and others. These customers are ticked, very ticked. And I personally feel for Zeta Riggs and her customer service staff. These workers are very respectful for the most part. So when they take the call, they just want to help the customer, not to be argued with and badgered because somebody over in operations decided to put a access ride van on the Route 55. That isn't even the operator's fault. I'm pretty sure if it was the operator's choice, they never would have chose an access ride van. So I'm going to ask, I understand the situation currently waiting for the vehicles, but can you all please use some type of thought process when you're placing these vehicles? I've actually told staff there are a few routes that you all could actually use those access ride vans without it being an issue. I will also bring up the fact that the RTA MCI buses are being used on regular routes. I've received a few comments from customer service saying, oh, it didn't run a full route, or it only went to a school, but it's not a school run. That is a school run if it leaves Central and goes to a school. That is a school run. And at the end of the day, I do personally have an issue with RTA buses being used on regular service. They have one door and multiple steps. Yes, there are rails, but that can create a situation when you're running a Route 55 from out there at the library off of Bell Road all the way downtown. I have actually gone out and watched this and sent emails every single time I've seen it when customers reported it to me, just so I would have a way of proof and backup in you all's customer service system to say, hey, this was brought to your attention that this keeps happening. Even after speaking to multiple staff members and they made attempts to make this known to whomever is assigning the buses over at Nestor. The other issue, I would say that some of the customers are confused, and it's no disrespect to anyone, but we were kind of clear when there were public meetings about the biannual changes about the service not going to 1:15 a.m. Unfortunately, now there's a confusion where customers are under the impression that it will be, and I've told quite a few of them that I've heard directly from staff, they're not going to be able to do that come this biannual change. So I will ask you all to please make that known on all of your social medias, and please, if it's possible, to have a recording on every single WeGo bus so that this doesn't create a situation for any of you all staff. And that is my public comment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I don't have any other requests for someone to make public comments. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Are there any other public comments? Hearing no further public comments, that closes that portion of our agenda today. Next on our agenda are the information-only items, and you can see that in your booklet. There are 4 items that are information only. I'll ask the board if anyone wants any of these items pulled out for discussion. And if not, I would ask you all to pay dutiful attention to those items. And if you do have questions, that you have a conversation with either Steve or the staff member that prepared those documents. And I thank the staff for the preparation of those documents. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. And on that item, we have 3 things. And I would ask the board members whether or not you request any of those items to be pulled out of the consent agenda. Hearing no requests, I would ask for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda items?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Thank you. And now I will turn this over to Mr. Searcy for operations and finance.
Well, it appears that we're going to have the Katie and Dan show. And we'll begin with Katie.
I have to have them start bringing kids' pictures.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So today I'll be presenting the quarterly performance report for October through December 2022. We didn't see a lot of surprising data in this quarter's report. It was pretty similar to last quarter's report. The only thing I will point out is that there may be a discrepancy between the report that you received via email and the hard copy. The WeGo Link ridership for last quarter should have been 574. And as I pointed out, that's about 3 or 4 times what we had in the previous quarter due to the addition of 3 extra zones in October 2022. And then Felix will also be discussing the proposed addition of 3 additional zones for this coming spring. And so I wanted to take this quarter's report to dive a little bit more into on-time performance. A lot of the service changes for this spring will be related to improving reliability, but that's not necessarily going to correlate to substantially improved on-time performance. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges we have, how we're addressing them, and what our limitations are. On-time performance before COVID was in the low to mid 80s, 80 to 85% on time. When we started seeing COVID impacts, that went up into the 90s, stayed there for about a year, and now we've seen it drop back down to the low to mid 80s. And one of the reasons that we've seen that decline in on-time performance, besides obviously additional congestion, is an increase in variation in travel time. So when we have a segment that doesn't have a lot of variability, it's pretty easy to schedule. For example, on a neighborhood route where it takes the same amount of time every day, we schedule it for that amount of time, and our on-time performance is usually pretty steady. On corridors with more congestion and more variation, it's a little more challenging. So if we look at this segment here, the circle in that map is not on the right place. That should be from West End and 31st to Harding and Whitebridge. So about a 2-mile segment of West End on the Route 3. And here we're looking at travel times from West End and 31st to Harding and Whitebridge daily on weekdays at 3 p.m. So same time, same route every day for the last 4 or 5 months. Our fastest travel times were around 4 or 5 minutes. On the worst days, it took over 20 minutes. So, you know, looking at how to schedule that, we can schedule it towards the bottom. If we schedule it closer to 5 minutes, the bus never has to wait when it gets to Harding and Whitebridge. But if you're waiting for the bus, you have to be outside when the bus is scheduled to come in case it's on time, but you know that you're normally going to be waiting 10 to 15 minutes for it to come. If we schedule it towards the upper end, around 18 or 20 minutes, the bus is usually going to be on time when it gets there, but if you are already on the bus, you're going to have to sit there and wait for 10 or even 15 minutes. So it's like we're imposing traffic on you even when there's not traffic, which makes transit pretty unappealing. So we go for the middle ground. We schedule this for 10 minutes, knowing that it's going to be late a lot of days, balancing those passengers waiting and the passengers already on board the bus. But those delays add up. So over the course of this trip, we're seeing this variation on each individual segment. And so the way we handle that so that we don't introduce unnecessary delays in the middle of the route is by scheduling ridiculous amounts of recovery time at the end of the line. And that's why sometimes you'll see 2 or even 3 buses sitting at Hickory Hollow or Hickory Plaza or the Bellevue Park and Ride. It's because some days on this particular trip, the shortest travel time we've seen in the past 4 months was 44 minutes. The longest was 90. There was one that was 140, but I took that out of the data on the assumption that that wasn't valid, I hope. So we schedule that time, and it's unproductive time, but we have to have it there because if we don't, that bus is going to get progressively later and later and later throughout the evening. And so it essentially, you know, we're adding more recovery time, we're making our service less productive, and our on-time performance is staying essentially the same, but we're at least adding some reliability for the next trip to start on time. And then I also want to talk a little bit about weekend and off-peak travel times. This is somewhere that used to be safe previously. Weekends didn't really change much. And we're starting to see some serious upticks in travel time on a lot of our corridors, on West End, on Murfreesboro, on Nolensville, on Charlotte, on Saturday afternoons. Just as an example, this is Nolensville Road. We've added a solid 5 minutes to the travel time in the last 2 years. And if that goes up by another minute or two, it's going to take another bus that we hadn't previously budgeted for this route. And of course, I think you guys know what all of this boils down to. It's that until we are out of the traffic, either by the traffic going away, which historically has so far only happened in the pandemic, so probably not the best option, or a way for us to get out of the traffic. We're going to have to keep throwing resources at this to keep delivering the same service. And that concludes what I have for this month, unless you guys have any questions. Thank you.
I know all of our West End and Bellevue members, right? I mean, you're experiencing the same thing in that corridor. Murfreesboro Pike, we're experiencing the same thing. So it comes out, put a finer point on it than maybe Katie did. She was trying to be polite, is until we have dedicated lanes, we're fighting a losing battle. We will continue to throw resources as we are with this service change. One of the reasons we're not in a position to expand more of the better bus service is because Katie's got to throw more buses at the existing service levels to keep any semblance of reliability. So that's the bottom line. That's why projects for us like Connect Downtown and getting down dedicated lanes through the downtown core are crucial to service in our neighborhoods. So anybody who thinks that plan is just about downtown hasn't sat on a number 3 or a number 52 or a number 55 waiting to get through the core. And why projects like Murfreesboro Pike, Bus Rapid Transit, are critically important. And I was going to mention it in my report. I mentioned it to Janet up front. Next month, we'll be honored to have Deputy Governor and Commissioner Butch Ely from TDOT here to chat with the board about the Transportation Modernization Act and what opportunities that might present, at least over the long term, to address some of these issues. But that's pretty much it. It's we are paddling upstream against a pretty intense current.
So I do have one question. So what percentage of the routes, I mean, is this just true for all the routes?
Primarily corridors. So Charlotte, West End, Murfreesboro, Nolensville, Gallatin. Not so much on Dickerson Road yet, but it's coming. It's coming. Neighborhood routes where we're not seeing these kinds of impacts, but.
And as a reminder, those high-capacity corridor routes are about 80% of our ridership. So it's pretty significant. And because a lot of those neighborhood routes depend on connections to the arterials, just because your, number 28 bus is running 92% on time doesn't mean that you won't get screwed up with another connection out there. And that's why the frequency in those corridors becomes really important. I know one of the initiatives that Katie and folks in operations are working on is something called headway-based scheduling, which is when we're at things like 10-minute frequency in a corridor, you don't really care whether the bus is on time or not. You care whether the bus is about the same distance, from the one in front of it and the one behind it. So that's certainly going to be an emerging issue and a service model for us moving forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Number 2,
Good afternoon, everyone. The item I've got to present to you today is the Enterprise Asset Management Assessment Consulting Contract Award. It's on pages 42 and 43 in the packet. As a quick background, we rely on technology to help us to manage service, but we also rely on it to help manage our assets and to make sure that we're efficient in terms of performing vehicle maintenance. And right now, a lot of the processes that we use aren't necessarily the most ideal. There are many manual processes. We rely a lot on paper still, and we don't really have a consolidated single source of truth when it comes to tracking the status of a vehicle. And what I mean by that is the dispatchers are working out of one system where they're assigning vehicles to the routes, but our maintenance employees are working out of a different system when they're, for example, assigning work orders to routes. So there's a manual process to kind of tie those two together that's really important. And there's also, because we have multiple systems, there's duplicative entry, and so you can introduce errors that way. So what we're looking for through this project is to have a consultant come on board to provide a needs assessment whereby they'll look at what our processes are, what our technology and capabilities are, how those systems are configured, and help provide some guidance in that area. And one of the outcomes of that could be that we need to procure a new technology. And if that's the case, we also have optional tasks outlined within this overall project to be able to accomplish that while still retaining the same team that has gone through the needs assessment exercise with us. And another piece of that is evaluating how our facilities asset management processes and technology tie into those programs that we're going to use or that we are using for vehicle maintenance. So through this procurement process, we received 8 proposals. 2 were deemed non-responsive due to their inability to meet DBE goal requirements. We, as the evaluation committee, narrowed things down to 2 proposers who we conducted interviews with and also went through a best and final offer process with, ultimately selecting eVision Partners as the most responsive and the one that the evaluation committee felt most confident in being able to deliver on this project. The criteria that were used in the evaluation are included in the written board item. So after that process, we were fortunate enough to also through that end up with a proposer that actually exceeded our DBE requirement by quite a healthy margin. So the action item before you today is that we are requesting, staff are requesting the board to provide the CEO authority to enter into a contract with eVision Partners for the needs assessment and any additional necessary services in support of our enterprise asset management system for $708,392.78, with an additional 20% owner-controlled contingency, so controlled by us, the agency, for a total project value of $850,000. The initial contract term is for 1 year with 3 additional optional years, and funding sources are FTA funds matched with using state and local dollars. And the project is currently included in the MTA capital spending plan. Any questions?
Is there an industry standard software?
There are some that excel in this area more than others. There are non-industry specific asset management platforms that perform these kinds of tasks. Transit's a little bit different in that the asset management platform also needs to be able to support operational needs in terms of vehicle assignment, which are a bit different from many other industries. Even, the trucking industry, it's a little bit unique. And there are only a handful of platforms that incorporate the unique needs of transit while also providing a solid asset management tool.
I would add on to Dan's comment, though, it's highly likely that, in fact, I would say almost all but certain, there'll be a recommendation to replace the existing platform because it is extremely rudimentary.
What is that like? Do you have any idea of what that's likely to cost?
Part of this project will be to conduct an independent cost estimate to determine that. But yeah, you're probably talking about a 7-figure project.
And a lot, Walter, depends on related capabilities. For instance, some of these systems can give our technicians handheld capabilities for histories and diagnostics and access to, so a lot really depends on when we're going through the consulting process, what other enhancements we may decide to, but I think easily.
Hardware adornments, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you can do the sorts of things Dan's talking about, but then if you upgrade it to say, well, gee, we can be more effective in diagnostics if we do give these tools on the shop floor to a technician or these tools to a parts inventory person in the warehouse. That can be, and that'll be part of the business planning process that goes into this, and frankly, why we need someone, like the eVision group to help us sort it out that's kind of been down this road before. And then kind of like what we've been doing on some of the other planning activities is also planning for alternative fleets. What happens if we move to zero emissions, or what happens if we move to 24-hour-a-day service type models and what have you. But yeah, 7 figures is a good round number.
Yeah,
It's a lot of ground.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for that report.
Yeah. All right. Yes, we need a vote. Well, we've heard Dan's passionate remarks about the need for this assessment and having no alternate proposals on the table. Our committee adopts this as a recommendation they'd like to pass to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Searcy. Thank you for the report, Dan. Being a recommendation of the committee, it doesn't require a second. Is there any discussion? Any questions?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I just want to say anything that helps us create a better service and provide a better service for our riders and makes it easier for our maintenance crews and that I think is going to have my vote.
That's great. Anyone else?
We just pray that it does.
Well, he did say that they have an issue getting to the truth right now without something like this, so I
That is
think,
true.
right?
That is true.
With all that being said, if there's no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There you go. Assessment time. The road to the 7.
All right, Trey and Patrick.
All righty, good afternoon. I am going to just introduce Patrick and Denise and get out of the way. I believe you spoke once before, but Patrick Hester is our facilities maintenance manager. And he and his team do a great job overseeing our custodial services and our facilities maintenance services at all of our facilities, both for MTA and RTA. And he's a very valued member of our team. So he and Denise over the last, very, very valued member of our team. So he and Denise have been working hard for quite a while, trying to pull together a solicitation for our vertical circulation modernization work, and he'll be presenting that, and Denise with the overview of the solicitation.
Yeah, appreciate it, Trey. Hey, good afternoon. Yes, we've been working quite hard on this, so we are pleased to present today. So I'll provide an overview for the escalator modernization and preventative maintenance plan here. So vertical circulation is simply how we move our passengers up and down within the buildings itself. And the bulk of our movement is specifically done on our escalators and elevators. I do try to take the stairs every now and then, even though that escalator is awful easy to get to. So we have 3 facilities that we have those vertical conveyance systems on. And our public-facing facility is Wego Central. We have a set of escalators and 3 elevators there. We have our Nestor Street facility. We have an elevator there and an ADA lift, and also our Myatt facility, which we have an elevator there. Now, the facilities team is responsible for all maintenance and repairs at these facilities. Now, as you see here, we have good scores across the board as our facilities term ratings. But as you see, we've identified a conveyance. We could use some improvement here in this area. There are some challenges when it comes to conveyance. One is we have a very unique service. Now, in terms of service, we have unique service hours. We are running our escalator at 92% of the time of the day. That's like 22 hours a day. It has to be ran to complete our service. Also, we're seeing more than 10,000 passengers a day. That's a lot of folks, not just a mall type service. Also, with our unique service is our design that we have at Wego Central when it comes to escalators. We basically are on the exterior, facing exterior elements, anything from the highest heat temperatures to the coldest freezing rain and snow elements. And also unique to the escalator is the specialty equipment in itself. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of components to it. There's a lot of laws, a lot of regulatory items that come with it. There's a lot of safety elements that come to it. And it's just complicated equipment, just in a very challenging environment. So with that said, we had to have a plan of improvement, right? And the plan of improvement included that we bring in our vertical circulation consultant, VDA. So VDA developed a scope for us. They reviewed our vertical circulation across the board through all facilities. They reviewed our maintenance practices, and they directed us with their assessment to either replace the escalator or modernize it, and also make repairs to our existing elevators, and to complete a robust maintenance plan. And this will improve reliability and performance for us. So with that said, best decision at that point, after we looked at all the choices versus modernization and full replacement, and deciding the best situation, escalator modernization was the obvious choice for us to look into. It added no additional construction cost, so there was no extra repair, no extra subs to bring in for extra work needed for construction. It allows a flexible schedule and it's less invasive. But a modernization, simply, all the components of the escalator will be removed and replaced all the way down to the truss. So in all, you get a brand new escalator. Now, specifically, this escalator that is spec'd by VDA and proposed on is designed to meet our conditions. It's an outdoor rated unit. It is APTA compliant per our foot traffic. It has heaters to combat the exterior elements. It has a standby mode to extend our life. And our maintenance team will love this. It has lubrication-free chains. That doesn't mean that we don't lubricate the chains. We don't have to anymore, but lubrication-free means it will ride a lot better and last a lot longer. That's what that means. So now that we've got a design here with the escalator that we need, what do we need next? A preventative maintenance plan that works and to make this unit last. So VDA helps us with this preventative maintenance plan, as we'll be conducting quarterly reviews, which will review the reports. The preventative maintenance plan is fully comprehensive, includes all complete service and repairs. Preventative maintenance plan, of course, has inspections and tests, covers all callback services. We'll review, we'll be reviewing all tasks performed, all systems and upgrades and modifications that are done, all failures that come through are done. And with this preventive maintenance plan, there are performance guarantees. And with that said, if anything is not happening correctly, there would be penalties assessed against the contractor themselves. So they do not want to have this happen. And holding them all accountable would be third-party inspections performed by our vertical circulation consultant, so that we have everything book wrapped right back around with these quarterly reviews. So our staff, myself, our third-party consultant, our partners who will be proposing on this, we'll all be taking care of these items. Now, the modernization process itself. Now, initially, a lot will not happen. They'll survey the units, shop drawings will happen. About 8 months will go by while parts are being made, and then construction could begin after that. Now, Coney has developed a plan that a unit can be done one lane at a time, one escalator at a time, or the escalator can be completely modernized at the same time, shortening the duration. That plan will be reviewed by everyone within WEGO, and we'll decide the best route. Now, luckily, we have been through this before back in 2018, not necessarily escalators, but back in the construction, where we've had to make plans for a construction site and for alternative routes. So we are prepared for this, whichever direction we decide to go in. At this time, I'd like to bring up Denise Richardson.
Just briefly to review the procurement, because it's always a concern when we end up with just one proposer. We anticipated limited competition for this because of federal Buy America requirements, which require 100% domestic production for all iron and steel products. Kone does meet Buy America requirements. Schindler also meets Buy America requirements, but they elected not to propose. So we knew we would have limited competition. We did put the solicitation together to allow companies to propose on the escalator modernization as well as the maintenance, one or the other or both. We did get a proposal just for maintenance from TK Elevators, but as we talked about it, and as Patrick mentioned, the goal was to coordinate all of the maintenance with the construction, because the worst case scenario for a customer, particularly at Central, is to find the elevator and the escalator out at the same time. And so by consolidating all of the maintenance with one contractor while the escalator is being rehabbed, it will allow us to assure that our customers are not inconvenienced by having both out at the same time. And then with just the one elevator at Myatt and the lift and the one elevator at Nestor, economically, it didn't really make any sense to separate those two facilities out under their own contract. So we consolidated everything in our evaluation and ultimately decided to go with Kone for both the modernization as well as the maintenance contract to assure continuity of operations. So that's why the procurement is structured the way it is. And so with that, Patrick, do you want to do the recommendation or? Okay.
I'll be glad to. Like I said, there's been a lot of work put into this, a lot of thought, a lot of process, and we're very proud of the work that was put into it. So the staff is requesting the board to provide the chief executive officer the authority to enter contract with Kone for the escalator modernization and ongoing vertical circulation equipment maintenance. The escalator modernization of $1,495,800 with a contingency of $375,000. Preventative maintenance over a 5-year contract of $111,678,080, with an additional $250,000 for major repairs beyond scheduled maintenance, with a not-to-exceed budget of $2,231,678.80.
Questions? All right.
When do you think the process will begin for the escalator?
Process will begin immediately upon approval. We would like to conduct surveys as early as next week.
Oh, you're ready. Excited, it sounds like.
But you're probably not looking at an impact on customers till the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
How long do these things last? I mean, with the amount of wear and tear that those things get?
With the preventative maintenance plan here we have in place, this life cycle of this current unit is scheduled to last 20 to 25 years.
Okay, that's great. My other thing is you get extra credit for making the pun, escalators have a lot of moving parts. They have a lot of moving parts.
Trey loves puns.
What percentage of this contract is for elevator repair and for escalator repair?
The $250,000 is for elevator repairs. That's what we have in our TAM plan that was already planned and scheduled ahead of time before this came about. So that was historical, already planned out money.
So the remainder is for the escalators?
Yeah, well, the $111,678 for the preventive maintenance is escalators and elevator preventative maintenance, $250,000.
I'm talking about the retrofit now, I'm not talking about preventive maintenance.
It's all escalator.
It's all escalator, yes.
It's all escalators, yeah. All right, did we have any numbers on, the contractor's DEI participation?
DBE? That's, yeah, there's no, because it's all one contractor and it's a non-DBE contractor.
We did not put DBE participation goals on this contract because we did a survey prior to putting the solicitation out, and there are no certified DBEs, even in Tennessee, that do elevator and escalator maintenance. It's very much a niche specialty. There are in other parts of the country that have much larger systems, where they have, more opportunity for business on a regular basis, but we did not have any in Tennessee. The requirement for maintenance response time is 30 minutes, which meant that we needed to stick with someone local who could have a crew that would be available to us, particularly given the short window of maintenance operations. When we have the escalator available for maintenance, someone has to be there and ready to go. As far as Coney's diversity participation, we asked them to provide those numbers. They were not able to break them down geographically just for Nashville, but they do have a program where they recruit their entry-level technicians and help them get union participation through the apprenticeship program. They are also working on making sure that they have their own program to help people pass the apprenticeship test, to be able to get into the union, that's been a big issue in the building trades nationally, as far as the entry-level testing, and the need to better prepare the students, and Kone is a big part of that nationally.
I can attest to that. 40 years ago, I was working on that issue.
I know. I spent a lot of time on that issue,
Especially with the
back
elevator
in New York.
operators.
Yes, it's a very difficult field to get into. There needs to really be a much better outreach across the entire industry on getting people exposed to the trades, so that people know that this is, a career path for them. And the training programs really need to understand that students coming in may not be coming in with the best math and reading backgrounds that they need to have to be able to pick up a set of blueprints and understand what they need to do. And there's only so much that your computer-aided design and your other technology programs can help you get up to speed with. You need to be able to interpret in the field as you go. So it's definitely a challenge, particularly in elevator and escalator maintenance, where you're dealing with so many complicated electronic components.
Are we in a position to, at this late date, are we in a position to require, for lack of a better concept, require them to report to us what their apprenticeship programs look like regarding minorities and women?
We can ask them for that information before we sign the contract, yes.
And, I'd be comfortable in taking another look at this, provided within the context of those numbers, notwithstanding the fact that it's not like we got another choice out here, but nevertheless, yank their chain about it and at least get them to understand we're looking at that and that it's important to us.
We did express the fact that it is important. I do, I guess partly because of my prior background, have a lot of understanding of the challenges that they face. Nonetheless, I think it's incumbent, particularly on a national company, to be sensitive to that issue. So I'm happy to go back to them and talk to them some more.
I mean, if they keep hiring nephews and brothers-in-law and yada, 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 yeah, they're gonna always have problems.
I understand quite well.
Possibly they could have an outreach career day at Music City Center while they're working, so. And try to recruit some of our students here in Nashville as they come through on our STRIDE program.
Not a bad idea.
That is one of the benefits of public construction. As people are coming through, you do have a tendency to stop and ask questions and find out what's going on. And it does become a very effective kind of sidewalk recruiting tool if you're able to then direct interested parties to the right place to go.
So so they could do sidewalk and intentional. With snacks after school.
Now, hearing the recommendation, with the caveats offered, the committee will pass this along to the board in the affirmative.
Okay. I think Margaret has something to
Mr.
add.
Cersey, I'm going to sign this recommendation, and I'm not going to sign it with a caveat. I think the caveat is just, as I understand it, is that Ms. Richardson has told you that she will ask those questions and that you're comfortable with her doing so. Is that right? Without it being part of the recommendation? Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Okay, so the recommendation is the staff recommendation that the committee is recommending, is that correct? Okay, with that, is there any, not requiring a second, is there any further discussion?
Just thank you on all the work that you've done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was a great job, both of you, thank you. With that being said, no further discussion, no further questions, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. It's going to be great that everybody can ride safely.
With that, Madam Chairperson, I pass the baton back to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cersey. You've been quite busy today. Real good stuff. So, Ms. Miller, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee has one line item today, which we will need to approve, which is the spring service changes, and then the Title VI analysis. So Felix is here to guide us through all that. So welcome, Felix.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. I'll be presenting the proposed spring 2023 service changes. I'd like to start by reminding you, and we talked about this a little bit before during this meeting, but some of what is the current context that we are operating under, and of course we're facing some challenges. Those include workforce shortages. We're taking some steps in each of these areas to be able to better address these. And for this, for example, we're expanding our outreach efforts to be able to attract new employees and diversifying some of our training, revising those training practices to be able to expand the pool, especially when it comes to operators and maintenance. We're also seeing some supply chain disruptions as everybody else across the different industries. So this impacts our ability to bring new equipment, replace the equipment that we have. So we are establishing some partnerships with suppliers to be able to expedite vehicle delivery, and also looking at opportunities to diversify our fleet where it makes sense to do so, to work around some of those delays. Lastly, and you heard Katie speak about this, the increased congestion. Evidently, it's a big impact that we're seeing, so it's forcing us to have to dedicate more drivers and more buses to be able to maintain the reliability that we have with the existing services. And when we brought the fall service changes to you in last year, August, I think, we talked about spring service changes that we wanted to do related to better bus. Some of those improvements we've had to delay because being able to maintain our focus on keeping the delivery or effective delivery of the services that we currently have. So just a quick overview of the changes that we are proposing for the spring. It's just a summary. We have modifications to the routes, just a few routes. We also have some schedule adjustments that Katie mentioned in her presentation, that we're having to do some of these to be able to more accurately reflect the travel times that we're seeing on the road. We also have some span improvements to one route and frequency improvements to another route. And the other, the improvements that we also adding to these is that the expansion of the WeGo Link program. We're proposing to add 3 new zones to the service. I'll go, getting into some of the details, I'll be brief on these. The first routing changes for our Route 3A, West End, White Bridge. It's just a block change to be able to reduce pedestrian crossings at the intersection of White Bridge and West End. This actually came from one of our riders during one of the public meetings, and we felt that it was something, made sense, it was reasonable and to do. So we are implementing this change. Also for Route 18 Airport, we are doing some changes, mostly around the downtown area, how the bus travels around downtown to be able to better maintain consistent travel times. Our express buses will exit at a different exit as they come to downtown, and the local and express buses will go also on a different route. Also for this route, we are improving the frequency. We are, for weekends, between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Right now it's hourly, so it's gonna be now 45 to 50 minutes. So it's a small improvement, but nonetheless an improvement in the frequency for this route on weekends. And the last route is Route 19 Herman. We are doing, again, a 1-block change. This is related to a difficult turn that may have some, safety complications or implications at the corner of 28th Avenue and Batavia. So we're doing this change around the block to make it easier on our drivers to make this complete the route. We're also doing span improvements for Route 77, Thompson and Wedgwood. We are extending service Monday through Saturdays until 10 p.m. Currently, it is until 6 p.m. And this should be something that is going to be able to help with accessing the Nashville Soccer Club games during game days. We heard a lot about this. This route goes directly by the stadium. And with the change of the schedules for this season, this is going to help with a lot of the, most of the games this season. So we wanted to do some additional improvements to this route, including frequency and span all days. But right now, this is a good first step. Actually, the council member, Sledge, also was very satisfied with us approaching this. So it's going to be something that is going to be giving another option for fans to be able to access the games. And then the biggest change right now is the expansion of the WeGo Link Zone. As a reminder, this mobility on demand service is a partnership that we have with Uber and Mobility Solutions in areas where we don't currently have fixed route because it's difficult to serve, it may be inefficient. So this helps us expand our coverage of transit. So we're adding 3 new zones. The first one is going to be in Bellevue. This zone is going to include the new James Lawson High School that is going to open for the fall semester for Metro Public Schools. We've been in conversations with them in ways that we can better serve this facility. This zone, we changed a little bit of the boundaries during the public comment period, just to add additional neighborhoods and access to water parks was one of the things that came from Council Member Henderson. So we were able to address that. This is gonna have 3 transfer locations. 2 of them are gonna connect to our Route 3A West End and another one to our Route 50 Charlotte Pike. The second zone that we're looking to implement is Cockrell Bend. We've actually, during the past few years, we've received requests for service to the Cockrell Bend area. Again, this is mostly industrial area. It's difficult. We looked at expanding or extending some of our fixed route to this area, but it was gonna be a little difficult. But we feel that at least this is gonna be a good first step to provide, and perhaps as a different approach to the other WeGo zones where we connect people from residential areas to the bus stops, this will have a connection to employment opportunities in the Cockrell Bend. So this is gonna have 2 connections, one to to Route 50 Charlotte Pike, and another one to Route 19 Herman. We did receive a letter from Goodwill Industries during the process for these. They had some concerns about their employee population and being able to use Uber. There's another option besides Uber, which is Mobility Solutions as well. And the zone currently will take anybody directly to the Goodwill building. But what we would like to do is to reach out to Goodwill and try to have a conversation about what their specific needs are, explain the program better, and be able to explore any other opportunities for coordination. And the last zone that we are proposing is on Sylvan Park. This zone was triggered in part because of the Metro ordinance that was eliminating minimum parking space requirements for developments in Nashville most urban areas. So when we looked, there was kind of a gap here in the system as far as the coverage. And I know some of the council members wanted to make sure that there was some options. So we look at providing the connectivity here in this area as well. We did also expand the boundaries as we currently or previously had it proposed, just based on feedback from the public comment period, to extend to areas of West End and West St. Thomas Hospital. And this zone is going to have 3 connections, two of them to Route 50, Charlotte Pike, and another one to Route 3, West End. And of course, this is a quick reminder of the previously proposed changes that we had for the spring. We were looking to expand the hours of operation. We wanted to do additional frequency for frequent routes, for some local routes, and also for some of the crosstowns as well. We're just delaying these, but the intent is to continue to, as we work on those challenges, be able to implement these hopefully later this year. And just a summary on the public outreach, we had comment public period between January 17 and February 7. We had 3 public meetings, 2 of them virtual, 1 of them in person. We received over 100 comments. Not all of the comments were related to the specific service changes proposed, but nonetheless, it's a good opportunity to hear more like the change we did with the Route 3B, or 3A, I'm sorry, about that connectivity. So overall, support for the changes and specifically for the WIGO link zones proposed. And lastly, as with any service changes, we complete a detailed analysis of the changes to ensure that we are complying with Title VI requirements. The only major changes during these service changes were for routes 18 and 77 and the WIGO link zones. Just to remind you, the adverse effects are considered disproportionate for minority and low-income populations if they exceed 20% compared to those non-minority or non-low-income populations in the county. When we look at the fixed route changes for Route 18, the benefits were actually greater for those populations. It was about the same for the changes proposed to Route 77. Now, when we look at the WIGO link zones, those thresholds were exceeded for the specific zones. However, the role of the WIGO link zones is to provide service in areas where we can't really operate fixed route service because it's difficult or ineffective. So many parts of the county that have higher proportions of low income or minority already have fairly good access to fixed route service. And also, when you look at this, we cannot overlook the fact that we're providing access to new destinations, to employment opportunities and services that otherwise would not be available to those populations if we didn't have this service. And since WIGO Link is a phased program, when we implemented the 3 zones last fall, the south, expansion of the southeast, Hermitage, so the proportions of low income and minority in those areas are higher. So we started by implementing those zones first. When you look at all the zones together, all 7 zones, we do not exceed the threshold. There is no disparate impact or disproportionate burden for those populations. So I think this is my last slide. So unless you have any question, the request is for the board to approve the service changes as presented to you today for the spring, and they will take effect on April 2nd, 2023.
Great, thank you, Felix. Comments, questions?
The only thing I would highlight, Madam Chair, is Felix talked about some of the challenges, but I'd also highlight some of the accomplishments and the tremendous strides we're making on onboarding people. Number one, we are expanding service, and Felix touched on that. Number two, we are throwing more resources at current service, as Katie alluded to try to enhance reliability. And number three, kind of related to the reliability issue, is we're also adding more operators to our directly operated access van service to relieve the pressure on our third-party providers. So that's really key. But training and operations keep that flow going. And also on the fleet side, we're on the front end of getting delivery of our 14 articulated buses. And later this year, we're expecting another 20 40-foot buses. So I would say we're looking really good for further implementation of better bus service enhancement in the fall.
Great. I would just make one comment, which is, Mr. Knight mentioned how important it is for us to communicate any changes. So I would just, I'm sure y'all have got that covered, but I think that'll be important. So great. Questions, other comments? All good?
Yeah, I just continue to be impressed with the intentionality and planning work of your staff here. So thank you very much, Felix, for this.
One other suggestion I have in line with Janet and the communication is you do that new cockerel bin area, that you spend some time with the employers to make certain they're sharing with their employees that this service is available, and if any of them are available to do what's our ride program?
We Go Ride, yeah.
We Go Ride, yeah. So that way we can really encourage them to support that as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Great work, Felix. Thank you so much, and the whole team. So with that, Madam Chair, I will hand it back to you. That is our report. Oh, no, that is not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is
Nobody wants to vote
making
today.
a committee recommendation based on the feedback to approve the spring service changes as presented. So that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing.
what we're
Okay,
doing.
I like that. I think everybody in the room likes that. So, it being a recommendation of a committee not requiring a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion and everyone looks excited, hands up, like we're gonna get these great service changes. I will therefore call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well done. Thank you. Well, I think that concludes.
That's it for
your
me.
report.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. So I will turn this over to our CEO, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members. Just a few items to highlight. Number one, I'll highlight, it was in the information-only items, but on page 8 of the board packet is the full package of materials we submitted to Metro for this year's budget process. Mirrors the conversation we've had with the board over the past few months. And since we have not yet engaged in the actual budget deliberation process, there really wasn't a whole lot to add in discussion. But I will highlight, we did request overall in our baseline budget about $68.9 million in operating assistance from Metro. That represents an increase of about $7.2 million. That would fund continued number one, factors involving our continued operation of existing service levels. Full year operation of better bus enhancements that were partial year service improvements over this prior fiscal year, and also some related projects like the kickoff funding for operation of the Ernest R. Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center. Trey and Denise and the gang keep expanding our shelter program, so that means we need additional shelter maintenance capabilities and what have you. And in addition to that baseline request, we're asking for about $5.4 million in investment funding for next year's better bus enhancements. And those include several route extensions and a new route to serve the Ernest R. Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center. We're scheduled to have the internal staff discussion with Metro Finance on March 22nd. And our council Finance and Budget Committee hearing is currently scheduled for Tuesday, May 23rd at 4 o'clock, and we would certainly welcome members' participation in that meeting. Speaking of Metro and the council, earlier this week, the council approved the city's capital spending plan. Overall, the plan includes about $24.9 million for us, so that's certainly very welcome. It included full funding of our request to match our state and federal grants, full funding of our request to continue our neighborhood transit center expansion program moving into next year, and expansion buses toward the Better Bus program. We got partial funding for our stop and shelter expansion project. We had requested $3 million, we're awarded $1.5 million. I'm optimistic we'll be able to make up that difference, number one, through state and federal sources, but also Metro's kicking off, you may have seen the news, they're kicking off their participatory budgeting process where people in various neighborhoods get to actually select projects. And thanks in large part to Trey's work, we've been very successful in getting funding for specific stop and shelter improvements through that program. So we're optimistic. And then the other funding we didn't receive was for our routine bus replacement program and our access van replacement program. Frankly, we offered up the access funds to be sacrificed because we have such a backlog of orders now with the supply chain issues that if it had been awarded, frankly, we would not have anywhere to spend it in the near term. But of course, the proviso we put in there was we'll be back next year. And then on the bus replacement program, because we've had relief through the federal pandemic funding toward our operations side of the house over the last few years, we will have sufficient funds to pursue our normal bus replacement program using our federal formula funds. I'll stay on the capital theme and say we also got some good news this month from our friends at TDOT. I'd say 90% of the time we call them our friends, and 10% of the time we call them they are obviously our friends in this case. We were notified this month of award of 3 projects under TDOT's Competitive Improve Act program. One is $1.8 million that was awarded toward the upgrade of our real-time signage system and related hardware at the Elizabeth Duff Transit Center at Wego Central. The second was, toward my earlier point, $1.2 million towards stop and shelter improvements in the system. And a big one, I think, is $5 million toward our upcoming Hickory Hollow Transit Center project in Antioch. So funding for that program continues to be moving forward. Working with our State Transit Association, we've been following Governor Lee's proposed Transportation Modernization Act legislation, which is working its way through the General Assembly. As we speak, we've been involved in several meetings with TDOT and Deputy Governor Commissioner Ely regarding the act and the possible impacts or potential improvements in public transit as a result of it. I also participated in a meeting with the Davidson County legislative delegation to talk about the act. Broadly, what the act would do, there's a lot in it, and if you're interested, we can have a longer discussion after the meeting. But broadly, it would authorize TDOT to solicit proposals from private sector partners through a public-private partnership process to undertake what are called choice lanes with roadway expansion projects. So not chewing up existing lanes in that approach. And that could potentially have significant benefit along the lines of what we were talking about with Katie, because specifically written into the legislation is that public transit vehicles would have the ability to use those lanes free of charge. And it would be a measure to try to address congestion in some of the urban areas as well as to generate
Steve,
some
are those
program
all
funding.
interstate projects or any state road?
They aren't not necessarily, they don't have to be interstate projects. Certainly in the major urban areas, most of those limited access highways are interstates. But, a good example where it could be applied, I don't know if this part of the plan would be, say, the 386 project, which is not currently on the interstate or designated as an interstate. And in terms of coming attractions, we can look forward to next month. Deputy Governor Commissioner Ely has agreed to participate in your board meeting for the board to be able to chat about this with TDOT. NDOT's continuing to advance their Connect Downtown mobility planning process. They're about getting ready to release some various scenarios on different things. And as we've talked about in prior meetings and when Marty Sewell presented to you all a month or two ago, it really is all encompassing in terms of downtown mobility. But one of the specific items that will be breached in the public scenario release are specific transit priority corridors where we could be seeking dedicated lanes through the downtown core. So stay tuned, and I know once that gets further along in the process, NDOT will be back to engage with the board in those conversations. I want to give a particular hats off to Billy Higgins, our capital grants administrator in the planning department, but really everybody. We are in the midst of our triennial review process with the Federal Transit Administration that actually, because of the pandemic, is happening 4 years later. We were delayed a year, but it's a pretty intense process where the FTA looks at all aspects of our compliance with the hundreds, maybe, of federal regulations that we have to comply with. Billy does a tremendous job of herding the cats every time we go through this. I officially, for the period of the triennial review, designate full CEO authority to Billy to enforce her will upon every department head. And so far, she said to me, everyone has been a very willing and cooperative partner in producing the thousands of pages of documents that we've had to do. So thanks to everyone for your efforts there. And again, alluding to our hiring efforts, I want to give another tip of the cap to Kim Tucker, our Director of Administration, our training and HR departments, and Andy's group in operation for continuing to onboard tons of folks. We have a lot of folks in the operator pipeline. And really exciting to me is the continued evolution of our maintenance apprenticeship program. We're going to be celebrating our apprenticeship signing day on March 16th as we enter 6 new candidates into the apprenticeship program, and they are going to include 4 internal candidates as well as 2 external candidates. Long-term, as I know Andy and Carl and I have talked about, that will be our pipeline for technicians. Frankly, everybody's trying to hire technicians, and everybody's having trouble hiring technicians, whether you fix buses or escalators or fire trucks or school buses or whatever it might be. So I really think our work on the apprenticeship program is going to be crucial to our success. And then finally, as always, I'll close with one thing from the RTA side. I mentioned to you in prior months, we've engaged Hatch Consulting to do a STAR future vision study for what we might do to evolve the STAR to be even more effective. They are full bore into it. They've done a number of stakeholder meetings. They've collected some of the baseline data. They're looking at land use patterns along the corridor. I know I've been involved in several meetings with some of our elected officials in that corridor with Hatch. So I'm very optimistic that that project will produce some really solid recommendations moving forward. And unless there are any questions, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Steve. That was a very good, comprehensive report. So I don't have much today. I just know that we had a lot today, a lot of information, a lot of consent, and also a lot of action items, which means everybody has been working so dutifully and moving we go forward. So just want to thank everybody for all of their work and keeping their eye on everything that really needed to be done. Patrick, I think you may have presented one other time, but I really think this was the really big time. So welcome to the table and great job. So just want to welcome you when you get a chance to come to the podium and hang out with us a little bit, but good job. Thank you. I could really see the team effort with all of you all too. And maybe one day you could share some of those inside jokes that I noticed you all had, but it's okay to share. But other than that, I just think it's a really good job, but we still have a lot of work to do. Very clearly, as our city changes and as our city progresses, it really presents opportunities and challenges for our service. And so I think the fact that you all have your eye on what's happening and trends will help a lot, at least help to explain when we're not on time or when we are slow, and finding new ways to try to sort of work through that. So I appreciate everybody's efforts. Board members, thank you all for all your time. Margaret, thanks for keeping us on task. And Steve, great report today. And that concludes my report, unless anybody has any questions. With that, I'll ask somebody to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Janet Mellon.
Second. Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Not bang the gavel.
Oh.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.